as a past board member of Lake Reservoir Company and the Farmers Co-op Irrigation Company, I would like to dedicate this movie film to all the members of the Lake Reservoir Company and the Farmers Co-op Irrigation Company. Trip in 1960 to Granite Lake. The board members of Lake Reservoir Company and other members were there on the trip. I'd like to name off some of the people who were there. Carol Parks, Clarence Ficken, Art Barker, Neil Parker, Vernon Wilson, Ernest Asmussen, Ted Clauser, Ray Epperson, Ray Kesgard, and Everett Walker. The members inspected the dam, the condition that it was in, and had to make a decision just how we were going about repairing it. We were thinking about contracting it or how we were going to do it. The conditions of the area were pretty neglected, and quite a lot of work had to be done. The decision was made to, if we did anything, to raise the dam, and if we did that, we'd had to do a lot more work on building the dam higher. So that called for quite a lot of study at just what we were going to do and how we were going to go about it. Some of the members are out there inspecting the soil conditions to see what we had to work with. That was very important because we had to be sure we would have enough to finish the height of the dam. The first part of the problem was to drain the lake as low as possible in order to get as much dirt fill as we could get. So in order to do that, they had about one of the first things they had to do was dig a deep trench out to the outlet. This is it right here, in order to drain it down as much as possible. And then from then on, then they could start hauling in the dirt and do it. The final decision was made that the canal companies would do the work themselves. They brought in their own equipment and did the work, and we had to start out by doing the cement work and putting in the outlet pipe, as you could see there, to drain the lake out before we could put the fill dirt in the dam. So a lot of work went on day after day, and that was the outlet part of the other end of where the water run out of the lake into Lick Creek. This work went on day after day, and then you probably wonder why we would go to so much trouble to restore Granite Lake. One of the main reasons is that we wanted to restore it was in order to build up our reserve for the big Payette Lake, which we have storage on, which I'll explain to you later. We worked on this in the year of 1962 and finished it in 1963. We got a kind of a late start in 1962, and the weather didn't agree with working very well, so we had to finish it up in 1963. We kept working, continuing with this equipment, and you'll notice there's drag line in there. That was furnished by Emmett Irrigation. And the carryall here was furnished by Emmett Irrigation. The smaller cats that you'll see working there were furnished by Farmers Co-op and the Noble Ditch Irrigation Company. We made several inspection trips up there, and you'll see different shots of visitors there as the dam progressed in both in 1962 and 1963. We also had a problem with the cabin up there, as you can see on top. Well, our Forest Service man supervisor wanted us to burn it out, tear it out, tear it down, and we kind of wanted to keep it there just in case somebody got stranded. But he insisted that we get rid of it, so we finally got rid of it. Well, everybody wasn't happy about that, but that's the way it finished out. We were, as you can see, it was a lot of work here, pushing the dirt up on the dam. It went on day in and day out, and in order to raise it, why, we had to put in more fill than was in there originally. In other words, the new specifications called for 4 foot of freeboard. In other words, the dam had to be 4 foot higher than the highest part of the lake. So that called for a lot more earth fill and a lot more riprap rock, as you'll see as we go along here a little bit farther, going in. And we also had to buy some timber. That raising lake, we had to buy some timber from the Forest Service, trees. The Forest Service estimated what that value was, and we sold it to Brown Lumber Company, but we wound up with about getting half the money out of it that we paid for it. Here's another good picture of the riprap of the dam. The boys stopped here for noon hour here. In the background there, if you watch close, you'll see a deer walk across. They had a pet deer that always was around the camp, but up in those trees in behind there. He may show up there pretty quick. You notice the riprap going on. That had to be hauled in from about probably a half a mile away out of a rock boulder area. We had to use a lot of dynamite to blow that rock out so we could put it on the dam riprap, as we call it. The equipment that you notice there with the teeth on, the bulldozer with teeth on it there, that's what we call a rock rake. That was used over on Bully Creek Dam here in Oregon, and then we bought it from the contractor that put in Bully Creek, and he had taken it to Spokane and brought it back for us. So you notice how the rock is placed around the outlet of the dam there, or grate over the dam. It's an entirely different gate than the one you could see when we first walked in on the first inspection trip. The control, you can't even see the control. It just barely sticks out of the ground on top of the dam. That way we don't have any problem with the vandalism or ice and snow breaking it down during the winter. That's what happened probably before. We are getting a view of the spillway. It's a cement structure spillway, as you'll notice. It was put in after all the dirt was hauled into the dam, and of course it had to be packed in real solid, just the same way with the pipe under the dam had to be packed in real solid. And the outlet there was the overflow outlet was built, of course, according to the Forest Service requirements and our engineering requirements that engineered the dam for us to start with. And we had a problem with it later of when the lake had filled up and the overflow had gone over so high that the bottom of the dam had underwashed, and the cause of it was because the engineers and the Forest Service made us put a trench at the bottom to slow up the water when it would spill out, come out of the lake. That was their theory, that would keep it from washing farther down. And the problem was that the water would come over, and then they would, when high water, it would shoot right over the top of the dam and off the sides, and and it underwashed all the clay dirt, and all that was under there were just boulders on the low end of the dam. The lucky part of it is our superintendent, who was Walker at the time, Everett Walker, had enough experience with Emmett Irrigation District. He decided that wasn't the right thing, and he put another cutoff wall. Of course, there's a cutoff wall in the front of the spillway out the lake, and then where it dropped over, he put in an extra cutoff wall that the specifications in the Forest Service and the engineer didn't call for. If he hadn't put that cutoff wall in there, there's no doubt we would have lost this spillway when that water underwashed the tail end of it. The reason we know that water overwashed and flew high in the air, Carol Parks at the time, one of our board members for the Emmett Irrigation District, flew over it in his airplane when the water was coming off real high, and he could see the water flying in the air, and he knew that wasn't going to work. So we finally built it up and went in there and filled up the trench at the bottom, which was about 18 inches deep. But the forest supervisor up there said that wasn't going to do. He was going to make us take the cement out of there before we filled the lake. So we went up. Carol Parks went up with a jackhammer, and he chiseled out so that he had another Forest Service inspector there checking on it, and they worked on it and lowered it about 6 inches, and the Forest Service inspector said that let's get out of here. It's too cold to stay around here. That's about the way it should have been in the first place. So that was one place where we really lucked out. We did real well there. Box Lake, 1,395 acre-feet of space. We went in for an inspection trip. Took us 3 hours to get in there by horseback and walking in. And this is what we found when we got in there. We had to find someone to clean it up, and we hired Ray Nasula to go in with his small cat, permission from the Forest Service to take it in to clean it out the first time. We had problems later and one of our problems is the dam would overwash on the fast runoff in the snow melt. And the reason it run over is because our spillway on the side was a wooden structure in the shade of trees, and it wouldn't let the ice melt out soon enough, and when the big runoff come, it run over the dam where the head gate was instead of where it should go. This is a picture of the group that went in on horseback and for the inspection trip. I had a shot of given to me before this, so that we got it a little bit ahead of the tour. The group was first shot was just the first look over the lake, and then this is where the dam is there, and the water running out of the dam. And we walked back and forth and looked it all over and see what the Forest Service had to tell us that we had to do and how we were going to do it and so on. So we had quite a few problems there. This is a downstream outlet from the side spillways. Notice the spillway was built in early history, made out of logs. Had some boards. Had boards there. So you could even put some boards in to raise the lake a little bit higher. So we had to redo that, rebuild it, and we eventually had to put in a new gate. The gate had rusted out and gone out. We had to put in a new Armco gate. We had that hauled in by helicopter, and cement to go in with it and so forth, and some section of pipe we had to put in order to repair it. that was quite an undertaking going in by helicopter to see. We made several trips in there, one year after uh, another, to see what we could do. With the Forest Service was still complaining we had logs in there, and that was one of the reasons we went in to see what we could do and to clean it up if we could. We still have a few snapshots of the trip in on the 3-hour trip earlier, but the helicopter trips are going to come up here pretty quick. This is a trip of a helicopter going in, as I recall, and it's kind of a dim picture, but it's quite a shot of the lake, and you can see it pretty good, get an idea a little bit about it. And the helicopter settled down on the dam part of it, and we made 2 trips in one year, and then made a couple of trips the year following. One of the trips we did some logging while we were in there. We cleaned up the logs and carried them and piled them up, and so that we could burn them when the Forest Service gave us permission to do it, which was right before the fall wet season, so that we wouldn't cause a forest fire. There's a copter coming in with some. I was in and took the picture of it coming in and settled down. And then we all looked the place over, and while the helicopter went back to get another load, we some of us stayed in and waited for him to come back and pick us up. And that was a lot easier than going in, walking in by, or going in by horseback. I can't name all the fellows there, but most of the Lake Reservoir Company board members, and probably our caretaker up there. Pretty good pictures of some of the boys right there. When we went out there, I asked the pilot if he couldn't swing around over Granite Lake. We'd like to see it. He said sure. He just made a little round trip home, and we flew over Granite Lake, and some of these pictures are probably on the way home from Granite Lake, is going back to the McCall Airport. We enjoyed that very much because some of the fellows had never been up, and I personally had never been up in a helicopter. And some of the boys were scared of it. They wouldn't go the first time, but they'd went the second time, and that following year. So we tried to get that in good condition, but they've had a lot of setbacks with the lake, and had to go in there several times, and we spent a lot of money on 1,395 acre feet. I thought maybe we better move out of there, and suggested that, but Jim McClure, Senator McClure, said, you better not do that. This water is going to be real valuable someday, and you better stay right in there and fix it up. So that's what's going on. It's still working for us, and it's one of those important parts of the outside water coming into the big Payette Lake, that in order to make a better lake for recreation and the summer homes, it'll fit in the program a lot better. Yeah, I'll tell you more about that later. We're still on our way out of Box Lake, and our next trip is going to be by car up the upper Payette Lake. It'll be showing up here pretty quick. But the boys really enjoyed getting in there and getting a look and see what was going on. They didn't have any idea just what these water storages were, the 3 different storages out of the Big Lake area. There, we're carrying on a logging project there yet at Box Lake. We all got it together. Sometimes we'd have to pack a log. The lake was drained down, and we could get at the logs, and we'd pile them up outside the lake so that our man up there would have an opportunity to burn them when the Forest Service gave them permission. You notice there's 3 different fellows carrying that one log there over to the pile. It don't show too good there, but that's what's taking place. We spent, I'd say probably a couple hours each one of us in there, or maybe longer than that. Might have been 3-4 hours. I don't remember anymore just how far back we had to go. We were in and out several times. Our caretaker had to go in by horseback because we couldn't afford to send in by helicopter. It was too expensive, so he would have to go in by horseback to close and open the gates, and we went on. It has to go on year after year in order to do that, in order to store water there. A lot of people like to go in there fishing. We could see several fishermen in there while we were there, and they seemed to have a pretty good luck there. I don't know whether our department puts new trout in every year or not, but it possibly do. There's a copter coming into McCall. I was in there and I took a picture of the copter coming back to McCall. Upper Payette Lake, 2,500 acre feet, was built in 1953. The bids were taken in 1951 for $15,717. Irrigators use this Upper Payette Lake to stabilize the big lake before sending water on to the lower valleys. We didn't spend very much time up here, but we've had some experiences up there, kind of bad ones. Logs would get in there, and one time the logs got in there and overspilt the dam on the side, which isn't a very good spillway. It doesn't carry too much water, and if the logs got in there, you had to open up the gates in order to lower the lake in order to keep from overflowing and washing out the dam. Joe Boss, our man up there, caretaker in early history, had to happen to him. The water comes off so fast that it has to be watched pretty close in the spring of the year when the snow is melting. Now we're down to our dam at McCall, Lardo Dam we call that. The gates are up pretty well. The dam is pretty well up full, and we stopped on one of our trips from the Upper Lakes back and looked it over. This lake is very important for scenic and recreation and summer homes. There's millions and millions of dollars of summer homes around the lake. And so as we as operators on Payette Lake, we operate Payette Lake 5.5 feet up and down. The big Payette Lake has a capacity of 28,500 acre feet. We are able to hold that water there, and that way we satisfied the court decree that we were working under, that we have to bring the water from the outside lakes in after we've lowered the big Payette Lake 2 feet. That 2 feet down on the big Payette Lake gives the summer homes an opportunity to have beaches in front of their homes and so forth. And then we bring the water in, and we hold that up until after Labor Day, and possibly don't need to bring our rest of our water out until we get into later in the irrigating season. We also operate with our contracts down on the Cascade Dam. We have Farmers Co-op Irrigation has 18,700 acre feet, and Lower Payette has 10,000 acre feet of space. And we have an unusual contract there on those two. We are able to carry over water in Cascade Lake, and what we're able to do, we could move some of that water out, and then we could bring in the Payette Lake water real late in the year and fill our bucket back up again at Cascade Lake, so to speak, which is a real good contract, one that the Bureau of Reclamation won't write anymore. So that was one. We finally come on down after Cascade Lake, and our next picture here is the head gate of the Farmers Co-op Irrigation Company, the control part of it, and so on. We had visitors go up to a dam up in Washington, the Cooley Dam, when they saw electrical gates working. They come back and said we'd ought to have one. So I brought in Dan Applegate, head of the Reclamation Department over the dams in this area under Harold Nelson, and Walker, who was the man in charge of the Black Canyon project until they turned it over to the farmers. And I got those two fellows to come in, look our gates over, and they said, well, you've got everything you need here. All you got to do is just bring in your electricity and put in some electrical equipment and make it work. So that's what we did. Our board members are up there looking it over and so on. We've had occasion after Applegate come in and helped us on that. He come back again and looked it over, and then the Bureau of Reclamation set up a tour every year at that time, and they wanted to bring in the people on the tour. They toured different places, the Waihe Dam and several different places in one day's time, and they wanted to know if it'd be all right to come in and show the people what a small irrigation company could do to regulate the flow of their water. So they've got them in, brought in 4 Greyhound busloads of people to look us over. We thought that was pretty nice. Fact is, we even had a picture in their pamphlet they printed after that. This is part of the control part of the dam at Farmers Co-op, where the little dolly goes out. We have to put in boards up there to bring the water level up and so forth. And there's the electrical gate working, and what happens is it works like a big water tank, like a stock water tank that has a float level in it. What we're doing here between our squeeze gates, what we call squeeze gates, about 3/4 of a mile downstream from here, it makes the water level stay the same all the time. Some of you people probably don't realize, but the Payette River fluctuates day and night a lot, and snow melt and up in higher country will change the level of the river. And so this electrical system here levels it out so that we have a steady stream in our canal at all time. Since then, that's worked out so good. I understand they put in a second electrical gate, which makes it better than ever. So that's what's happened there. Now here's when the December flood come in. You notice that the flooding across the willows across the river there and washed out everything. And I got a moving picture of this the day after the high water mark. It was higher than that the day before. And it did a lot of damage. We had to go in there and do a lot of work. And the government come in and said that it was a kind of a disaster deal, and they would help us out financially and repair it. So Dan Applegate, again, my friend from the Bureau of Reclamation, come over, and he said he was the representative for the government. He said, what would it cost? And so we went over on the little dolly and looked it over, and he said, what do you think it would cost? And I said, well, it'd probably cost us $1,000. he said, you'll remember that they won't pay anything for your own equipment, but they'll pay for anything you have to hire or material. And so we've picked up $1,000 there to help it. We had this problem here, and then we had another bridge washout over a wasteway down at Letha. Now we're at the Black Canyon Irrigation District pumping plant, putting in a pipe from the pumping plant up to their canal, uphill. The reason we were up there, some of us board members were wondering about going under our canal. They did a real good job going under, but we were kind of concerned about it because that was one of the second bad break we had on the canal in early history. That back when I was a kid in school, I could still remember the wagons and teams and the Fresnos and going up to fix the break in the canal. Back in those days, we didn't have big equipment to work with, and they had to do it with horses. So that was the reason we were there. It was a sandy area, and they had to go under our canal. So while we were there, they were doing work on this pipe, and so we just stopped and watched them for a while. We had never seen a project like this go in, and we wanted to see how it all was going to be put together. And I understand that this has worked out real well for them in the past years. They've gained a lot of water. The reason they put the pumping plant in because their tunnels in the head were a little bit too small and wouldn't carry the full amount of water to carry the water they needed per acre for the land under the project from here on out farther down the canal. So that turned out to be real good, and it's been a help to them. We've been around inspecting other places, and this is on our own place at Patton Point. Patton Point is a place where we've had a lot of springs develop under our canal. That's of course caused from our Black Canyon Black Canyon Irrigation District, and as the time went on, it kept getting worse. It kept sloughing off, and it looked like it was going to get up close to the bed of our canal. So what we did, we get Glenn Wolf up there with his backhoe, and what he would do, we finally come to the conclusion we'd try to push perforated pipe down deep under our canal so that our bed of our canal would stay dry. We worked on that, and it keeps sloughing off, and the only way we could able to push that perforated pipe under was to get the job done in one day. In other words, we'd open up the place, dig back as far as Glenn could dig back, and then push that pipe in and cover it up, because if we didn't push that pipe in that same day, the next morning we'd come and it would all be sloughed full again. So that worked out real well, and of course we had to use the drag line up above, and we kept working, packing the dirt in there, and it turned out to a good safety program, because we've did quite a lot of work up there on those springs, and we've worked on both sides of our spillway there to keep it from sloughing off. So that took the danger out of it. If you've ever been up to Patton Point area, well, you realize that's a pretty dangerous spot. This is a spillway going down, crossing the Noble Ditch, and there's the head gate part of the deal. In other words, those are control gates. They can drop some of the water there if they feel they got too much of it, and they kind of regulate the canal a little bit. But with our new system up at the head gate, at the main head gate up at the river, well, they don't have the problem they used to have. We're working still working on that there. We're spending quite a little time on it, and it worked out, and it turned out to be real satisfactory, because we wasn't sure it was going to work. I worried about that a lot when I was chairman of the board of the Farmers Co-op, how if it washed out, where we'd get the big equipment in there in a short time so that our people wouldn't lose out on their irrigation, irrigating their row crops and what have you. And I even had the commitment from the reclamation people they'd come in and help us. This is the Wilfong Wasteway that went out on the canal 3 days after we turned the water in. So we were forced to work as fast as we could to fill it back up. So we hauled in clay dirt from close in there as fast as we could, and fixed it up, packed it back in, and worked on it all we could. You'll notice the spillway there goes on down. We have a deeded right-of-way for that Farmers Co-op. In other words, if you ever want to use it again, it's still there for you to use if you want it. The problem here was that we used to use this to regulate the canal at this area, because that was before we had the automatic gates. So we went back to didn't put it back in. So we just did without it. So we got along so far, as I understand, without having it in there. We've tried to keep our canal regulated by the head gate up at the river that I was pointing out to you before, and that's the important part of it, is to have a regulation canal all the way through the system. So that's the reason we didn't put that back, because we didn't think it was necessary. We've tried to keep the canal regulated the best we can, and that's what's going on still today. I hope you have enjoyed this video. I would like to thank my son Bob for putting this video together, and thank you all for watching.